Hello, my name is Saron Yitbarek, founder of CodeNewbie, and I'm so excited to welcome you to Codeland Distributed. Now, this is the fourth Codeland that we've done, but it is the first Codeland Distributed, which means that you get this awesome, exciting, engaging, inspiring content brought to you wherever you are. I'm going to be your MC for the day. I'm going to be here with you all day long, and I'm so excited to go on this journey with you. Now, to kick things off, I'm going to start with my own little talk, and it is called What I Learned from 6 Years of Building CodeNewbie. So if you don't know, CodeNewbie was acquired by Dev a little over 6 months ago. And so before Dev, we did a lot of the same stuff that we do now. We had Twitter chats, we had podcasts, we had meetups, and of course, we had Codeland. So I thought it'd be fun to kind of go back in time and take you through how we got to where we are today and all the different lessons I've learned as both a developer and a community builder. So let's get started. Let's start with my own personal coding journey. So about 8 years ago now, I worked at different startups, and I worked in the startup world in different non-technical roles. So I've done sales, I've done marketing, I've done business development, I've done a wide variety of roles and had a lot of positions. And what I found was that I worked alongside the engineers, and the engineers were frankly the more important people. Those were the folks who brought the most value to the team. Those are the people who had the biggest impact, the biggest say. And it didn't hurt that they also got paid the most. And so I kept looking over at what they were doing and I kept saying, man, I really want to be one of them. I feel like that's the future. That's going to be how I secure my tech career and how I really grow and develop in this field. And so I decided that I wanted to be hacker woman. I Googled, hacker to see like what kind of images would pop up. And this was the one that really like stood out to me. I wanted my hoodie and my backpack and my sci-fi background. And I was really excited to finally be an engineer, to finally be a developer. So I left my startup job. I spent a couple months learning how to code on my own, and then I enrolled into a boot camp called the Flatiron School. And when I was there, I had overall a really good time, learned a ton. And even though the curriculum was good, the teacher was amazing, the real value that I got out of my experience was the community. It was being in a room full of 44 other people who were just as excited about code as I was, but who also understood how much painful it could be and how much it hurts sometimes, and who really got the highs and lows of the journey of coding. And so I said to myself, man, for me to get that type of community, it was pretty expensive. I paid $11,000 out of pocket, 4,000 of which I had to borrow from my mom. And I basically relied on my now husband, then boyfriend, to take care of the bills while I went to school. And not everyone can afford that. And if you think about boot camps, usually there's no payment plan, there's no kind of student loan. It's all paid upfront, right out of pocket. And so I said to myself, man, if I wanted to get a community, especially back then, that's what I'd have to do. And that's a little pricey for most people. So how do you create a community if you don't frankly have the ability, the means, the resources to take 6 months off of work and not make any money? So I decided to go on my Twitter chat journey. So this was 6 years ago at this point. And 6 years ago, Twitter chats were all the rage. Everyone had a Twitter chat. They're a little less common now, but everyone back then had a Twitter chat. And a Twitter chat, if you haven't participated in one, is when you pick a time. So for us, that time is Wednesday evening at 9 p.m. Eastern time. And we picked a hashtag. And for us, the hashtag was CodeNewbie. And so every Wednesday night, we would use that hashtag to ask different questions. And we'd say, what are you excited about? What are you stuck on? What are you building? What tools are you using? And we'd use these questions as a way to get the community to really talk to each other. It was an excuse to get them to converse and to interact. And we did this for quite a while. We started every Twitter chat with 3 rules: be supportive, be honest, be nice. And that really set the tone for the entire Twitter chat experience. And over time, we ended up getting a nice crowd of people. This is a list of people saying really nice things about the Twitter chats over the years, about how excited they are and how inspiring it was and how much they look forward to it. And it's really great to read this kind of feedback and to really feel like this little thing you're doing is catching on and really making a difference in people. And so as a community builder, I learned quite a few things while doing these Twitter chats. The first is that I learned that people really need to feel safe and they need to feel loved. That is super important when it comes to community building. And for us, that safety and that love comes in the form of tweets that are all lovey and gushy and emotional and full of emojis and hearts. That's how we express love and safety. We want you to know that you are wanted here. We want you to know that you are welcome, that you are safe. We want you to know that there is a place for you in this community and in the tech industry. And so we really express this through our lovey-dovey tweets and our responses and our on our hugs and our smiley faces and all that good stuff. The second thing is that when it comes to community building, it's not really about a place, it's about a shared experience. And what I mean by that is I hear people say, oh, I want to start a community. Let me, go do a Discord page, or let me go do, a Slack channel, or let me build my own platform is another popular option. And I think that people overemphasize the location of the place. And really, it's not about the location. If you think about CodeNewbie for the first maybe 4 years, and arguably even now, a big part of where we lived, where we hung out, was just on Twitter, with social media. And Twitter's huge, right? It's not exclusive to Code Newbies, but it's where we were able to gather our community and gather this place of safety and of love and security. And so in doing so, what we really focused on is creating this shared experience. And for us, that shared experience was the Twitter chats. It was our ability to say, hey, we're going to go through this one thing together. And in going through it together, we're going to share lessons, we're going to support each other, we're going to provide mentorship, and we're going to really have a great time together. It's that shared experience that creates that community. The other thing I learned is that rules are super important. Rules do two things, at least for our purposes. It recruits and it filters out. For us, those three rules that I mentioned at the very beginning, that sets the tone. It says to people, hey, if you want to be here, you've got to be supportive and helpful and nice and kind and honest, and you have to portray these qualities. Those are the people that we want to hang out with. And in doing so, it kind of turns off people who aren't that kind of lovey-dovey, gushy type of person. If you're not a person to cheerlead and to support and to love back, you're probably going to be kind of annoyed with, frankly, a lot of what we tweet, a lot of what we say. So in that sense, it kind of filters out the potential bad apples. And that can be really useful in terms of moderation and making sure you have a strong and safe community. But the other thing it does is it recruits. It says to people, hey, if you need to be loved, if you need to be welcomed, this is for you. Come hang out with us. We're ready to give you all this positivity. And that makes people go, hey, I want to feel loved, and I got a lot of love to give. I have a lot of support to give to other people. Let me hang out here. This is a place for me. So in doing this recruiting and this filtering, it really creates an opportunity to curate a community of people who are really about the mission and who really see what you're trying to create here. As a developer, I also learned a few things. I learned that people are generally helpful, but it's up to you to ask for that help. One thing I absolutely love about the developer community is we really are willing and excited to help people. We are happy to jump on a random Zoom call, do a random phone call, even random messages and DMs, and we really are ready to give back. And I definitely took advantage of this, especially early on in the Twitter chats. Before the Twitter chat really took off on its own, every weekend I DM'd all the people who had more followers than me. At the time, I barely had any followers. And I said, please retweet this. Please share this message. I'm trying to build this community. I'm trying to help support people. I'd love for you to help me help them. And that really came in handy. And people were very excited and more than willing to be helpful. So take advantage of that. Make sure to ask for that help. People are willing to give it. The other thing I learned is about the power of Twitter mentorship. Now, Twitter mentorship is huge. Twitter mentorship is one of my favorite things. Now, usually when we think about mentorship, we think of this kind of long, intimate relationship where I have, I meet with you maybe once a week, once a month for an hour or two. You are deeply invested in my career and we know each other for years. And that's a beautiful way to do mentorship. And for people who have that, you're very lucky, treasure it, it's amazing. But for most of us, that's a little hard to find. And so instead, what I mean by Twitter mentorship is people who simply say, hey, I saw your tweet, I saw that you're struggling to get a job, I'll amplify for you. Do you have any questions? Can I prepare you? Can I make a referral for you? It's finding these little moments on social media, on Twitter, to give back and to provide a little bit of feedback, a little bit of guidance, and to support people along the way. And Twitter mentorship is really huge for both parties. As a mentee, it's incredible incredibly powerful to leverage the vast knowledge and expertise of people who are ahead of me. And as more experienced developers, I hope you take the opportunity to do a little bit of Twitter mentorship of your own. And the great thing about Twitter mentorship is it doesn't take a lot. All it takes is a couple tweets, maybe half an hour of your time. There's no long-term commitment. So any opportunity you have as a more experienced developer to tweet back, to respond, to engage is very much appreciated by the rest of us. So the power of Twitter mentorship is something I learned as a developer. So I noticed while doing these chats that there were some topics that were a little too big for Twitter. There were some topics that I really wanted to dig into, I wanted to focus on, and it was just kind of hard to do that in a Twitter chat format. And so I began my podcast journey. So we started the CodeNewbie podcast some years ago. I think we've done over 200 podcast episodes at this point. We've interviewed a ton of people. And in doing this podcast, my goal was to really focus on the CodeNewbie journey and the coding journey in general, how you got to where you are, what are you building, why are you building it, and really getting to know the people behind the code. And so as a community builder, I learned a couple things. As a community builder, I learned that stories are everything. Stories are super powerful. And at the time when I was kind of digging around and looking at what other content was available, I saw that there was plenty of technical content. There's plenty of content where people taught you how they were building things and what they were building, but there wasn't a lot on who the builders themselves actually were. And I really wanted to focus on the stories behind the builders and the stories of the builders and how they got to where they are. And this was something that wasn't completely new, but wasn't as popular as it is nowadays. So stories were absolutely important. I also learned that representation matters. And here I'm talking about diversity and inclusion, but I'm also talking about representation in terms of backgrounds, career tracks. For us, it is really important that we feature people who not only have CS degrees, but don't have CS degrees, people who worked at a big tech company and people who didn't, people who grew up always knowing they wanted to do computers and people who grew up thinking they wanted to be actresses or teachers and then became engineers and became developers. So having that wide range of representation really matters. I love getting those emails and those DMs when people say to me, hey, I heard that story of that truck driver episode, and man, I can relate to that because I'm a truck driver and that's what I'm doing. And I'm on my way to transitioning into tech. And thank you for having someone that I can connect with. So representation is super important. I also learned how important it is to get out of the way. As a community builder, to be totally honest, I'm the least important person in the room. It's not about me. I'm not the hero. I'm not the star. My job is to bring people together and then get out of the way. And I'm going to show you exactly what I mean. So this is the audio files for the CodeNewbie podcast. This is season 5, episode 8. And here we're talking to Chad Fowler. And here you'll see 2 audio tracks. You'll see that first track, which is in green. That's my audio track. And the second track on the bottom, which is that kind of bluish color. And you'll see that I don't really talk a lot. Those audio waves are pretty slim compared to Chad. That ratio is very different. So for Chad, you can see that he's taking up the stage, he's talking a lot, and that's what he's supposed to do. He's the guest. He is the star of the entire show, and it's my job to get out of the way and make sure that his story shines through. And just so you know that this isn't a one-time thing, here's another one from Scott Hanselman. In this situation, I talk even less because Scott's got a lot of stories and a lot of good things to say. And it's the same idea. I'm on the top audio track. Scott Hanselman is on the bottom audio track. And you can see that, again, I don't really say a lot. And to be honest, a lot of what I say isn't even words. A lot of what I say is me going, and If you ever want to be a podcaster, those are the only 2 sounds you ever need to know. Just that's it. And that's my job, to let the other person shine, to let their story really come through, and for me to take a step back, get out of the way. As a developer, I also learned a couple of things. I learned that there is no one way to do it. And we know this from coding. We know this from building our apps, building our products. There are many different ways to execute a feature. And that is certainly true for just being a developer itself. The journeys are so huge. There's so many different ways to become a developer. There are people, again, who started in their 20s, in their 40s, in their 50s. There are people who had a computer since they were 5 years old and always knew they wanted to do something. There are people who started when they were 5, hated it in college, then came back to it. So there really is no one route. There's no one way to do it. And my favorite types of questions is that question of how did you get to where you are? How did you get on this journey? And how did you end up where you are today? Those questions are really powerful and they really help validate our own experience. The more we can kind of get rid of that idea that there's only one way to be a developer, the more we can get rid of this gatekeeping that we unfortunately sometimes engage in, the more inclusive we can be, the more diverse our community will be, and the better and stronger I believe our community will be. I've also learned that junior developers are assets. Oh my goodness, junior developers are so important to have on the team. And they're important for a few reasons. Number one is they really force you to know what you're talking about. I think that as senior developers, it's really easy for us to kind of believe what we say without really criticizing it. It's really easy for us to get comfortable and to get used to explaining things a certain way or not explaining things at all. It's really easy for us to do things one particular way without being forced to reevaluate it. And the moment a junior developer goes, but wait a minute, why did you got to know your stuff and you really need to know why you're doing it, how you're doing it, and you have to be able to defend your position. So junior developers, are huge assets and they really do help you become stronger developers and really defend your position. The other thing junior developers do is they force you to get your processes together. It's not going to be as easy to be siloed when there are juniors on your team. You have to be able to collaborate with them. You have to be able to oftentimes pair with them. If you're not pair programming already, you'll probably have to pair with a junior developer. And it's really important to have those systems, those processes in place that allow you to collaborate effectively and efficiently, allow you to have really excellent documentation and good readmes and good comments. Because without all those assets, it's going to be harder for your whole team to function. And it's definitely going to be hard for you to work well with that junior developer. And so by using that junior developer to kind of get your house in order, it helps strengthen your entire team. So junior developers, we might take a little bit more patience, a little bit more time, but junior developers have a lot to offer. So don't take that for granted. The other thing I've learned is that consistency is really, really powerful. There are, again, many different ways to learn how to code, many different ways of getting to that final destination. But one of the most important factors that has been pretty consistent in almost all the stories I can remember are the value of consistency. One of my favorite, campaigns, if you will, is the 100 Days of Code campaign, which I think is a really powerful, really great campaign that says, hey, you're going to code for 100 days straight. Doesn't have to be a lot. It can be 15 minutes a day. It can be an hour a day, but you're going to code just a little bit every single day. And that's how we're going to build discipline. That's how we're going to build that muscle. And that's how we're going to make sure that we're making progress. And that 15 minutes a day might seem like nothing. And that hour a day even seems like you haven't really gotten much done. But what happens is that after a while, after those 100 days, you look back and you realize that you've actually come a really long way and you've gotten pretty far in your coding journey. You just didn't realize it. And so that's really what I've seen. There are tons of people who code when their kids go to bed, before their kids wake up in the morning. They code, they sneak a little bit of coding into the job when they can. They listen to their podcasts, they read their books, they get home at night, it's late, they're tired, and all they really do isn't, necessarily dedicate full-time hours. It's not even dedicating 20 hours a week. It's dedicating just a little bit, but doing it consistently. And consistency is incredibly important. So the CodeNewbie podcast is doing great. We're doing tons of episodes, interviewing a ton of people. And the thing is, I got an email from a company, which was really exciting. The company basically said, hey, I'll give you $200 if you run an ad on your show. And I thought, holy crap, I can make money from this. That was totally new to me. That was something I absolutely was not expecting. And so began my entrepreneurial journey. Now, as a community builder and as an entrepreneur, I learned a few things. I learned that it's important to capture the value you create, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think that as community builders, as content creators, it's really easy to just get so used to giving everything away for free that you don't really think to say, is there some way I can capture this? Is there some way that I can kind of get a little bit of that value myself? And I realized that for a business and for something to run as a business, it's important to be able to think that way. And so capturing the value you create is definitely an important thing that you should think about. As a developer, I learned the importance of sustainability. And sustainability means different things to different people depending on your context. For me, I wanted to do CodeNewbie full time. I wanted to be able to quit my job. I wanted to be able to really engage and focus on building the community. And so, in order to do that, I needed money. I needed to get paid. And so, I said to myself, I need to build this into a proper business. I need to get advertisers. I need to get sponsors. But as a developer, sustainability may not be about money. It might just be self care. It might just be, hey, I have an open source project. And in order for it to be sustainable, I can't do it on my own. I need to get a group of other contributors along with me to help bring this along, to help support me. And I need to create documentation so I'm not responding to all these individual issues one by one. I need to create an ecosystem around me. So, sustainability, whether you're community building or whether you're coding, are very important. So the other thing we did is we started a new show called the Base CS Podcast. And this podcast was done with my co-host Vaidehi Joshi, and she and I did this series where we took her blog post series and we turned it into a podcast. And we talk computer science in short 20-minute episodes. And so we did this, and then I got my next lesson that I learned as a developer, which is that accessibility is everywhere. Because what happened is I got an email from a listener, and this listener was blind. And this listener said, hey, I really love what you're doing with this show because, not only is it great and engaging, but also because as someone who's trying to learn computer science, frankly, there aren't that many resources available to me. Everything is written, everything is visual based, and there aren't a lot of resources that I personally can consume. And I read that and I thought, holy crap, I never thought of podcasting as an accessibility tool. I never thought of it in that light, but it was. And it really reminded me that accessibility isn't just about, ADA compliance in a building. Accessibility is about our websites. It's about our events. It's about having transcripts and having captions. And it really is in every single part of our world as a tech industry. It's super, super important. So next, I'm going to talk to you about my conference organizing journey. Oops, excuse me. So these are photos that were taken from, I think this was 2018. I think this was our second Codeland. So this was Codeland. So with Codeland, we had a really great time doing all the stuff we were doing digitally, but we really wanted a place where we can come together in real time. That was the main thing. We wanted to be in the same place at the same time. And so we decided to put on our very first conference, and it went really, really well. But the thing about a conference is that you learn a lot, and there are a lot of mistakes that you can learn, that you can make along the way. Conference organizing requires a ton of detail, a lot of attention to detail, and there are a lot of things that can go wrong. And we learned a lot that first year. We learned a lot again that second year, and we got a lot of really good feedback from the community. And so, in getting that feedback, this one email said to me, hey, really love what you did. Here's some things you can do better. And I responded and I said, thank you so much for your feedback. Your feedback is so good that you should go to other conferences and tell them how they can improve because they can learn so much from you. And that person emailed me back and said, oh no, I don't do this for everyone. I do this for you because I know that you'll actually do something about it. And that's when I learned as a community builder that feedback is love. Feedback is someone looking at you and saying, I trust you. I trust that you care enough to do the right thing, to improve, to get better. And I'm going to trust you with this feedback and trust you with these thoughts. And feedback can be hard to take, especially at the beginning, but it's actually really powerful and really truly a sign of love. The next thing I learned is that small, consistent acts build trust. It's not a grand gesture. It's not a one-time campaign or a one-time episode. It's creating multiple episodes every week for years. It's being there for the Twitter chat consistently, no matter, frankly, what you're doing every single Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. It's doing these little things and doing it consistently that builds up that community. As a developer, I learned that application is more important than tooling. I think as developers, it's easy for us to kind of get caught up in the world of tools and software and getting really obsessed with what we're using. But I think it is more important to talk about why we're using it. Who are we affecting? What communities are being impacted? What are the ramifications? What are the pros? What are the cons? And that context is incredibly, incredibly important. I also learned that everyone's a newbie. And this ended up being the unofficial slogan of CodeNewbie that I did not come up with. It was something that everyone kept saying to us, where they said, everyone's a code newbie. And it's true. I've been coding for 6 years, and recently I had to learn Python for the first time. So I was a Python newbie. And that's perfectly fine. We're always learning something new. There's always something new to challenge us. So this next part is a little bit personal. It comes with a bit of a trigger warning. I'm going to be talking about mental health and depression and that sort of thing. So if that is a trigger for you, I recommend that you just kind of step away for the next minute or two. So the next part of my journey is my mental health journey. Now, what I haven't told you is that throughout most of my time doing CodeNewbie full time, I struggled with a lot of mental health issues. I was severely depressed for a very long time. I was passively suicidal, which means that you think about it without actually acting on it or planning to act on it. And I went into some really, really dark places. And it got so bad that I said, I need to get help. I need to actually seek professional help. And I did. And after a couple visits and a couple tries, I was finally diagnosed with bipolar type 2 and with general anxiety disorder. And it took me, frankly, a year to really accept that reality and to accept that this was something that required professional help. It wasn't something that I could exercise my way through. It wasn't something that I could just, push my way through, being strong and independent woman that I am. It was something that, frankly, I needed medication for. And it took me way too long to accept that. And so, as a human, what I learned was drugs are great. Medication is amazing. My life is so much better, so incredibly improved by deciding to just accept that about myself and to take steps to improve my quality of life. So, the next thing I learned is mental health is self-care. I think a lot of times we talk about self-care, we talk about bubble baths and yoga and all these really wonderful, beautiful things. But mental health is just as important. Seeing a psychiatrist is a form of self-care. So if this is something that you're struggling with, I'm happy to talk about it offline. Please feel free to reach out to me. But I really hope that you take the opportunity to think about your own mental health situation and that you seek the help that you need if you feel like you're in a place to accept that help. So developers and community builders aren't really that different. That's probably the biggest takeaway from my entire CodeNewbie journey. We're always going through this loop of understanding, building, listening, and iterating. We understand the needs of our community. We build for our community. We listen for feedback, we try to improve, and then we iterate and build something new and exciting. And whether you're building an app or a community, this good work takes time and it takes patience. And it also is never quite done. There's always going to be a new feature to build. There's always going to be a new thing that you can do, a new thing you can improve. And it's really exciting to always be in constant service of your community and in service of your users. And now that we're a part of Dev, we get to serve the community in an even bigger and even more exciting way. And I'm so grateful to be a part of the Dev family and to bring even better programming and great content to you. So thank you so much. If you want to reach out about any part of this, especially the mental health stuff, please feel free to reach out to me. My Twitter handle is @Saron Yitbarek, just my first name, last name. So that is the end of my talk, my little keynote. Now I want to get into a couple housekeeping items. So one thing I want to draw your attention to is the fact that every single talk that we have comes with its very own dev post. And this is really important because it means that you get to ask questions. We want this to be as live and interactive as we can make it. So because you're here in real time with me, with all of us, we're going to ask you to ask questions, leave comments on each post. And what this does is it allows us to integrate your questions into our live session. So we have live sessions, live Q&As with just about all of the speakers that you're going to hear from today. And so we want to make sure that you have your questions answered. They'll be monitored, so please feel free to leave a comment, leave a question. The other thing is I want to give a huge shout out to our sponsors. Our sponsors this year have virtual booths. And if you scroll down on this page, you should see them at the bottom. They have their own little page, their own place where they're doing giveaways. They are offering jobs, which is great. They have open positions listed. They have digital swag. They have information about their services, about their products. So make sure to show our sponsors some love. We couldn't do this without them. Make sure to check them out. Also want to say that if you need any support throughout this conference, if you are stuck, have a technical issue, just need any type of support, make sure to go to our Help Connect room that's also listed below, and we'll be there to take care of you and make sure that you get the help that you need. And the final housekeeping item for today is our social rooms. We have 4 social rooms, and these rooms are great. This is your opportunity to get to know people. This is our way of trying to recreate some of that magic of networking and some of that hallway track that you get in a conference. So we've got 4. We've got introduction, CodeNewbie, water cooler, and show and tell. So make sure to get to those social rooms to make sure to hang out with people, get to know people, network, and build that community. All right, so next up we have our next talk. It's called The Art of Programming by Erica. Hope you enjoy it.